business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Steve Ramona. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the pod.
Welcome to Doing Business the Servant's Heart. I'm your host, Steve Ramona. I was pausing there for a minute because I'm looking at my guest going, I got so much to talk about with him. You're going to love my guest today. So that's why the pause. But I'm your host, Steve Ramona. Every episode is an invitation, a reminder that business and life isn't just about profit. It's about purpose. It's about showing up with a servant's heart in every deal, every decision, every day. Today's guest, he's going to light you up. He's going to motivate you. He's going to challenge you. But most importantly, you're going to walk away with tools that inspire action, both in your life and in the lives of other people. This is that servant's heart. Then before we dive in, here's your homework, audience. How are you going to serve yourself and serve others today? Doesn't have to be a big impact. Even a small act of kindness or courage can change a game and make a huge impact in somebody's life. We don't know what shoes they're walking in, but when you serve, you're going to be able to help people. So lean in, take notes. Let's discover how servant leadership in business and life can create ripple effects that last far beyond the bottom line. And a quick shout out to my sponsor, Epic Impact, the only universal, emotionally resonant messaging framework that works anywhere for any audience. This 4-step system transformed how I pitch, post, and podcast. Engage, persuade, inspire, and close, the 4 key words when you tell a story. And I get to use this daily and it works. Grab your free trial at epicimpact.ai and use the promo code Steve to start inspiring action today. And thanks to my guest today and my other guest and audience, we got named top 6 in small business marketing last month. And thank you all from the bottom of my heart, because you know what? We're making an impact. And that's the whole goal of the podcast. With that being said, let's bring our guest on. Furkhan, welcome to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart.
Thank you, Steve. I'm honored to be here and looking forward to what we're going to get into today.
Passionate about mental health. A lot of people are doing it, but it's important, especially after COVID. Why are you so passionate about it?
I think just recognizing for myself how much of it I had buried and I wasn't even aware. A lot of it started in childhood, and I just didn't take the responsibility to work on it. But part of it was just the lack of awareness. And a lot of it started to come to me at the forefront when I was going through a divorce in 2018. And then COVID was definitely another layer to that. But that's what allowed me to be more passionate, because I felt some calling like deep within me that maybe me going through this experience in life was to then be an advocate, mental health advocate for other men who are struggling at times. Doesn't always have to be relationship based, could be other areas of their life. So just through my lived experiences, I've also seen that firsthand. So yeah, that's really been what's the driving force and why I'm passionate about it.
Yeah, you can't talk about 2 perfect storms, divorce and then COVID. Oh my God, not good timing, but we don't have control over that. And you learn from it.
Yes.
But how do you go from, and how's your engineering background helped you with the mental health coaching now?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because most people look at it as like, well, that's such a significant change, right? But I appreciate you seeing how it's helped. I like to, someone asked me, I was at a social gathering, and they're like, well, it's such a big difference. I'm like, well, instead of solving problems for corporations, now I'm helping people solve their problems. So from that perspective, nothing's really changed. And I think that definitely helps, having that analytical background and the skill set on, well, let's get through this. And I think, before we jumped on, you asked me, well, what's your one superpower? And I think persistence. It allowed me to get through engineering. I wouldn't really give up until I had solved a problem. And that's been my forte in my personal life as well. So that's kind of what the energy I bring when I'm with clients. And at the same time, the biggest thing I've had to learn through my training in psychology is also you have to meet with the clients where they're at. Not all of them are ready to solve some of those deeper problems. So you have to meet them where they're willing to go. And sometimes it could just be surface level. And that, for me, allows me to be more grounded and show up differently because I have to hold space for them in that space, in that regard, that,
Yeah.
okay, they're not ready to go full flesh, but still progress is progress. And one of the things I remind all my clients is it's all about progress. It's not about perfection. So give yourself some grace at times when you feel that you're not doing as much as you think you should be, because that's where shame comes in. And I think
Yeah.
most people and men also do resonate with that shame piece.
Yeah. Yeah. Our egos get in the way. And it's funny. You asked me 5 years ago, I'd be the guy like, you're crazy, engineering to mental health. But now, great guests like you, wonderful. I've learned that, and you just taught me parallels, solving problems. It's just a different world. That's
Yeah.
all. It's still
Yes.
solving problems. And actually, it's engineers out there. If you want to get into mental health, I think it might be a good jumping point. Here's a perfect example. You talked about persistence, and thanks for mentioning that your superpower. How has that helped people with the mental health issues?
Well, I think most times when people don't see the immediate results, it's easy to just give up, right? Especially if the narrative that's been playing on in the background for you your entire life is based on shame, that you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you're a failure. So you're always looking for that evidence. In the addiction side, where I work at the clinics, we often talk about evidence-based decision making. So we all fall into that at times, where you have the evidence and then you'll make a decision based on that. So that's where persistence can be very helpful, where you're like, okay, you know what, I have to stick with it. And often I'll use the analogy of exercising, and it's an overused one too, but you're not going to see the results just by going to the gym for a week or a month or 2 months. You have to show up consistently and do it because you actually believe in the longevity of what you're working towards. And then when you do start achieving certain results, then you keep pushing further, right? So it's the same with mental health, right? You have to really stick with it. And some days you're going to notice progress. Some days you're going to feel like you're regressing, you're taking steps back. But even in those situations, there's a learning opportunity. How can you learn from what you've experienced and apply it next time? And then as you start making progress, you still have to stick with it and not give up because you're like, oh, now things are good. No, it's like this is a lifelong battle. And that's what I've internalized for myself, that this is never ending. It can creep up on me anytime.
Yeah, it reminds me of AA or an alcoholic. You're always an alcoholic. 20 years later, no drinking, you're still an alcoholic. You don't want to have that one drink, and we won't get into that. But that's what you remind me of, which is so powerful. Furkhan, I
Yes.
love what you're doing. What's interesting? I'm learning from experts like you is everybody has mental health. Like yesterday, I didn't have the best day,
Yes.
but I don't take it to the extreme. Talk about that and how people can generally take care of their mental health so they don't go to the extreme of, dying by suicide. I'm sorry to be, but we're seeing it all over.
Absolutely.
How do we
Yeah.
how we slow that thing down so we get to that level?
Well, I think the biggest thing that's really helped me is I can share personal experiences and then
Mm-hmm.
see, what lands for people, but at the same time, it's pretty consistent across the board. I've spent a lot of time studying philosophy too, and one of the things that I've really internalized is not getting too high or not getting too low. Very similar to yourself. This week's been a very low week for me, but last week I was feeling like I was walking on cloud nine, but I had to maintain humility in one of my groups that I facilitate. I brought that up. I said, things are looking really good right now, and I feel great, but I don't want to get too caught up in the moment because I know there is going to be something around the corner. But that doesn't mean I live in fear. It's how can I maintain that level of humility and be grounded that, okay, right now I can be grateful for how things are going. So as this week rolled around, I had capacity and space to deal with it. It's been an extremely tough week. My wife recognizes that too, but it's the practices that I've instilled that I'm not willing to compromise on. As I touched on earlier, it's that persistence and the consistency. So I've been able to rely on the tools that I use every day, non-negotiable. So I've been able to ride this week, but also again, have grace and be grateful that through it all, there are still glimmers of little things that are happening around me that I can be grateful for, despite in the grand scheme of things, things may seem bleak this week. And then still, I know we've talked about faith. I really tap into that. So I've had to turn to God more this week and ask for his help and turn things over to him, that, I'm powerless over some of these things that are happening. So God, I trust that there's a plan here. Just give me the strength to be patient and trust in your plan. I know there is something better waiting. So sometimes just that ability to let things go and surrender can get us through the lows. And
Yeah.
for me, I'm a big proponent of the role spirituality plays in our mental health, because there's a reason why these belief systems, whether or not you get attached to the dogma of it, at the end of the day, trusting in something beyond yourself has endured the test of time. There's a reason. So I firmly tap into that on a continuous basis.
And I absolutely love that. That's fantastic. And Stoicism, I've been studying it for 3 years, and I knew you'd smile. I think we talked about that.
Yes.
I read the Daily Stoic, and I get his email every day.
Yes.
I like that because that's helped me. Like today's a better day. I mean, having you on my podcast and getting to see you again. I love that. How I'm trying to, neutral is probably not the right word, but not too many highs, not too many
Yes.
lows. And that's what I do. I used to celebrate with food, and I became a diabetic and overweight, and I stopped that. I'm 40 pounds. I'm not diabetic anymore. And I'm saying this, all audience, because this is about Furkhan, but I've taken what you've talked about and said, okay, got to make changes. And tomorrow's a good day. The next day may not so be good, but then you got tomorrow to enjoy, hopefully, a good another day, right? So there's always hope. And I love that you mentioned faith. Now, mental health and leadership are now a big talking point, because leaders like you are helping the people because you've lived through it. Talk about how you see that parallel with the leadership and mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kind of give a backstory.
Yeah.
So when I was working in corporate, I think part of my struggle coming in was I was chasing the titles. Like from the get-go, I was like, I want to be a leader, I want to be an executive, and it was all extrinsic. It was like, okay, if I achieve these things. And then at the age of 30, when I became a father, I started questioning all of it. It was almost like this existential piece came in. It's like, okay, if I achieve these titles, what does that mean for me as an individual? Does that make me a better father, a better human? What will people say when I die? So I started really having these deep existential questions, and just trying to grapple with it all. And it took me several years. And what I've come to realize now, and I share this because I think often we lose sight of, and you touched on this right at the beginning, the impact we can have. And we don't need a title next to our name, or we don't need to be told we're a leader to have the impact that leaders do. Right. And for me, one of the other things, aside from Stoicism, I've read biographies of men that I often consider my mentors, even though they're not alive, but just reading their stories has really helped me. And I think about the profound impact these men have had, and they're leaders, but were they considered leaders at the time when they were alive? No. So does that change the impact they made? No, either, right? So from that standpoint, I think it goes back to something very deep that you said, that even if it's one person, you could still guide someone and be that leader figure. And we lose sight of it. We can be leaders in our homes, with our children, with our spouses. And again, I'm not saying that men are the only leaders. I think, my wife is a leader in so many different ways in our home. And I don't think I would be able to manage if she didn't take on that leadership role in different aspects. But we both bring different strengths to the table. So we have those capabilities within our home. And then you start expanding it a little bit within our families, within our communities, within society. It doesn't always have to be something so grand, right? And for me, the way I internalize it is, if I'm being my authentic self and I'm focusing on the things I need to do to be my best self, then that's me being a leader, because I'm sharing that energy and that wisdom with the people I come across, whether it's in a therapeutic standpoint or even just in general in regular interactions at a social level. I can impart something or share something that they can take back and
Yeah.
do something with.
I love that. And the whole conversation about family and leadership, I'm glad you said that, because my wife's a leader in a lot of things in the house. I'm a leader in other things, and leadership goes not just in business, not just in sports, but in our lives. My business partner talks about the CEO of your life. And you mentioned that. I'm sure you have a lot of these, but can you tell us a transformation story of somebody you work with? And of course, names can't be spoken, I'm sure,
Yes.
but tell us the story in the what happened.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that have happened over the last few months that have been really humbling for me, and it's just a nice reinforcement that I struggle with doubt. I made the full transition this year into therapy from my corporate oil and gas gig, so there was a lot of doubt throughout the year. Is like, am I doing the right thing? Am I in the right place? And then it's funny how things work. I get this little wink from God that no, you're in the right place, when a client would just show up and just be like showing tremendous amount of growth, and it would be amazing to experience. I think the one that's really stood out to me is a client who had a lot of sexual and trauma and bullying early in their life, and they internalized that, and it showed up in their daily life. It was always like, oh, I'm weak, I'm not good enough. And we did a bit of trauma informed care, and it was like immediately after, this was after several sessions, but something clicked for them. And I remember like there was like this overwhelming feeling for them, and tears and emotion, and just the realization in that moment. It's like the opinions of the people that were laughing at me back then, or at least my perception of them laughing at me, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter now in my life. And I've been carrying that. Why? I don't care about their opinion. And it was that little shift in that moment. And I think so many of us live our lives thinking that, someone's looking at me, or people are thinking this about me. And I see that even with my parents at times, and it breaks my heart, because I'm like, you're robbing yourself of any experience when you get caught in that. And I think social media in today's world doesn't help, because again, you're living for others, or you're comparing your life to others, and we all fall victim to that from time to time. But it takes away from being present and really experiencing life for what it is. And I'll just finish this off with something, I've really taken to heart over the last few years. I love going out for hikes and climbing mountains, and part of the reason why is because in nature everything is just being. They're just doing their function, what they're meant to do. And for some reason, us humans at some point figured that, oh, well, we need to be told what to do, or we need to be conditioned a certain way, and we do get conditioned early on. So how can we just flow with life?
Yeah.
And I know that's tough at times, but that's my goal when I'm finding myself in those patterns.
It's a great story, because I've lived through that, and bullying is today, as much as it was 50 years ago, is a problem. The problem today is too many resources or ways to handle it. I just heard somebody's friend's son, 14 years old, died by suicide. Well, I'm 64. I didn't hear that 40 years ago, when in my 20s. So the world's changing. That's why we need beautiful, awesome, God bless people like you doing what we're doing. We're coming to the end, and I'm kind of sad, but I want to learn about your podcast and
Yes.
what you're doing with that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. My podcast is called Easy Conversations, a little play on words. The business I started during COVID was called Unoya Zen. So easy comes from there, but also around normalizing a lot of the conversations we've deemed difficult. Part of the reason why I started it was, as I was stepping into the space of mental health and seeking therapy, I really started opening up. It was like I found this landmine. I was like, oh, now I need to like explore this. And I was super excited. And I was just talking openly and vulnerably about my experience, because A, it was therapeutic, and B, it also allowed me to connect with people. I was finding these like points of connection beyond the surface level conversations. And what I started noticing was that in the beginning, I was only speaking to men, but everyone had a story. Everyone had some story. And when you get to the depth of it, and I think just being able to get around the surface conversation and get to the story has also served me well in my work as a therapist. But once we got that pressure off and the men I was talking to felt relaxed, we'd uncover so many gems and just connect on a deeper human level that, yeah, we're all figuring it out. Life hasn't been easy, but it's not that bad either. Like there's so much meaning we're creating and through our experiences. So I felt like this could be a podcast where other people can tune in and realize that it doesn't have to be that crazy or scary to be vulnerable. Like I can connect to someone else's story, just like these two individuals are on the podcast. So that was the starting point, especially during the pandemic. It really helped me connect with people globally. When I was stuck at home, I was still socializing and having these meaningful conversations. And then since it's evolved where now I'm talking about not only mental health, but social issues, uh, how people are overcoming adversity in their day to day lives, like the heroes behind the scenes that we don't necessarily see or talk about, but everyone is fighting some battle. And it doesn't always have to be something significant, it can be whatever you're dealing with and how you're making an impact through your ability to overcome adversity and what you've learned and how you can impart some of that wisdom to others.
Beautiful podcast. Easy audience, E with E and a Z conversations. I'm going to check it out because I love listening to podcasts now. It's beautiful. Let's end with a fun question, learn a little bit more about you. So you got a reservation at a restaurant, table of 4. You got 1 chair, so you have 3 empty chairs. Who would you invite, whether they're dead or alive, to talk with, and what food would you order?
Okay. 3 people I can invite.
Yep.
So Mahatma Gandhi, Malcolm X, and Muhammad Ali. And what I would order, I would order, I don't know, like I don't even know if I'd be hungry at that point just to talk, but yeah, keep it simple. Maybe French fries just to make sure everyone. I know Gandhi was vegetarian, so be respectful of that. I would just talk about what connects us as humans, and all 3 of them. I've read their stories, and it's like, how did you manage to stay committed to your version of the truth despite all the adversity that you all faced, and what can I learn from them?
Yeah, what a great table. Oh my gosh. Yeah, and sweet potato fries for Muhammad Gandhi. We'll just get him that. So he's covered. He's vegetarian.
Yeah.
Furkhan, you have the perfect personality for a therapist, but your passion for it is just exudes out of you. Thank you for sharing so many golden nuggets today. I know people listening are going, how do I connect with Furkhan? How do I find him? So how can they find you?
Yeah, I mean, so before that, I really appreciate the space, Steve. I really love how you've just allowed me to connect with you, and your grace and your just your creating this opportunity and space. I love it, so I really appreciate you.
Yeah.
In terms of connecting with me, I'm active on LinkedIn. You can find me based on my name, Furkhan Dandia, or Instagram. So that's where you can. My handle is Yunoya Zen. I'm sure you'll put all of that in the show notes. But yeah, and then I would love for people to check out the podcast just to hear the story of other people, right? Like, and find someone. I'm sure there's something you can relate to, especially if you're finding that you're going through something difficult. There's something out there. So yeah, please, if people want to check that out and learn from what others are dealing with.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's private. You put your headset on, like I have. I go for a walk, put my headset on. It's just me and my podcast, and it's powerful. That's why I know I love what you're doing. Not think, because the conversations could be out to the world, but that one person could listen and they can heal a little bit or a lot, which is great. Furkhan, thanks again for being an incredible guest and just being you. Audience, subscribe to my YouTube channel or subscribe to Furkhan's channel. And here's why. there's gifts out there. He just mentioned earlier so well that you listen, maybe you get something from it. What's the word he used and I used at the beginning? Impact. That's what these gifts do. That's what podcasts are about, impacting people and making a difference. So let's go ahead and do that. With that being said, me and Furkhan want to thank all of you for watching or listening to this podcast, and we'll see you all in the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. Have a great day, everyone.